Oh, hey guys, happy Wednesday. This week I have been all sorts of off as to what day it is and what's going on, and I have no idea why. Maybe it's because it's the first kind of normal week back, and then next week we're going to have a day off of school and stuff with Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So getting back in the swing. So excited for a lot of what's coming up. I've got a lot of things scheduled in, a lot of interviews. I've got some different people within the business I'm going to be interviewing and getting some of those videos out. So I'm really excited to do that, and still editing. Gosh, the editing. If I could find somebody that has the same vision as me to get all my editing done, that would be like gold. I would definitely want to pay them to do that. So if you know any editors, send them my way. Hope you guys are having a good Wednesday morning. Yay, Alan. Hey, ATM. I was somewhere in my state. So I want to share with you guys, I am kind of not shocked, but I'm pleasantly surprised how many new emails I am getting from people that are, you know, I get a lot of emails from people who have had losses in the past. Like, hey, when I was young, I went to the funeral home and this is what happened, or this is what happened. I'm now getting so many emails from so-and-so died last week, or so-and-so died 2 weeks ago. Much more current losses that people are reaching out to ask questions about, which I love. But once again, it also, why are you not asking your own funeral directors? Is there a lack of connection with them, a lack of trust, a lack of relationship built there? Or are you just not part of the planning process? You don't know the funeral director enough to ask them. Really curious about that. If you have had a loss recently, give me a thumbs up. Not that that's a thumbs up sort of situation, but hit me with a thumbs up. I really am interested to know if that's kind of, you know, what brings you here and why you seek out, you know, my channel and my information is because you've had a recent loss. So I've got some questions. After last week, a lot of responses about songs. Didn't know it was going to be such a hot topic. We were talking about music, and I had shared one song I want played. It's one of my husband and my favorite songs, is Fast Cars by Tracy Chapman. And someone had told me to go listen to the Khalid version. So amazing. But then that led me down the road of other covers of the Fast Cars song. And I started subscribing to this kid on YouTube. His name is Alfie Sheard. Do you guys know about him? Have you been keeping him from me? He is the sweetest young man with the most amazing voice. So if you don't know who Alfie Sheard, he does a lot of covers. He writes his own music. He's from England. So of course I love that because I love England. I'm like such an England fan right now. It's ridiculous. Let me get some questions. Let me focus here. So Lee's asking, went to the visitation yesterday, had blue lights over the casket, never seen that before. Pink lights, do you know what the blue light does? Sort of the same thing, just helps with coloring. Whereas, you know, our skin texture is very reds and yellows and blues. You know, if you look at your skin, your veins and your blood shows through, I'm very veiny, as blue. So if we need to incorporate some of that blue color, you add a blue light. Some people play with the lights more than others and really use it for cosmetic effect. Others, it's just they're built in the same colors. If you especially have someone who's jaundice, which means their color of their skin is very yellow or greenish, sometimes maybe orangish, then someone may play around with the colors of the lights a little bit more to get a better coloring to the deceased. When it comes to jaundice, there's bodies, I just happen to have this pillow sitting here, that will come in and they will be literally like highlighter yellow, just bright yellow skin, which typically if they're at that stage of being jaundiced, it is saturated into the tissue and we cannot wash it out during the embalming process, where sometimes we can wash out a lot of it, getting rid of the yellowed color within the bloodstream. But if it's saturated in the skin, then it's going to be all about cosmetics and what we do after the embalming. ATM. Oh, goodness. You're recently diagnosed with heart failure. Because of that, can I still donate my other organs? So there's not a lot of organs you can donate unless you die being brain dead. You can still do like corneas, sometimes inner ear, long bones. So not so much organs, but tissue and bone structure. Sometimes you can donate your heart valves if you are already deceased, but most of your organs need to be recovered while your heart is still beating. So it's a brain dead situation. That's why it's such a really small percentage of people that can actually donate organs, because it's got to be a very specific situation. But you can definitely try to donate as much as you can when you do die. So I'm sorry to hear that though, ATM. That's probably a heartbreaking diagnosis for you, I'm sure. No pun intended, obviously. So you can embalm anytime after death, the sooner the better, because if the blood, if the person is a little still warm, the less clotting we run into with the bloodstream. However, you go to places like England, it's going to be 2 weeks to a month before you may be able to embalm before the body is released. So it's still possible. You're just not going to get as good of results because you're not going to get the dispersion maybe you would have before. But there's definitely things we can do, like use warmer water and use stronger fluids. So there is definitely every situation we assess kind of what we're getting into and then, choose from there what to do. Why can't a person be in the casket with a pet that has died? My mom died back in May. She had a dog that was found with her. Cemeteries, there's a lot of cemeteries that have laws against commingling, not even the cemetery, the state or the county have laws against commingling in the cemetery of humans and animals. So it was a big thing this last year. I think it was New York changed, and they now allow humans and animals to be buried in cemeteries together. But for whatever reason, and yes, it's pretty ridiculous, if I must say, because dead is dead. Like, why separate animals and humans as if our systems are different and we would hurt each other by being buried together? I have no idea. That just, it's a little ridiculous because there are people who are found with their animals who have died at the same time, or there are people, and I get so much backlash, but this happens, that they go and they euthanize the animal to be buried with the owner because nobody wants to take the animal. It's an old animal, whatever the situation. And I know you don't need to give me all that's so horrible thing. But that happens where they want to bury the animal with the owner. But a lot of times they'll cremate the animal and put the cremated remains in with the owner. Donald, I am on SSI. When my mother died in November, I used my Navy life insurance to pay for the funeral. I have lost my SSI. I kept my military life insurance. I did not know I did anything wrong. I'm a little confused by what you're saying. You're on SSI and it says you used the life insurance to pay for your mom's funeral. But now you've lost your SSI because you did that, but now it says you kept your military insurance. So I'm not quite sure. Can the ashes of owner and animal allowed? Not if you tell them that they're both in there. No. So if it's not divulged to the cemetery, then, ignorance is bliss, I guess. Is the elastic on the undergarment tight enough to keep the fluid from leaking out? Oh, on the plastic undergarments? Yes, typically it is. But the elastic is fabric, and so it's going to wick, which means it retains the fluid in it. So if there's enough, then it'll start running out, just like it would with like a bandage or anything. Why are most funeral homes that traditional antique style inside furniture? So that's kind of the old school way that funeral homes used to be, is very like flowery carpet and dark fabric curtains and hodgepodge, ornate wood, everything. That's the old school. If you go into a newer funeral home, it's going to be much more modern, probably clean lines, white trim, grays and light browns, and very clean and such. So a lot of that is just, it takes a lot to remodel, it takes a lot to replace. So that's just how it's been for forever. And a lot of places don't remodel very often because of the cost. No, I've never had to stop a funeral or viewing because of liquid coming out and have to clean them up. During a visitation, we've had some people that leak, and the family is right there and they understand what's going on because it's maybe a situation we were walking up to, we were encountering prior, and the families helped wipe mouths or dab ears or wherever the fluid may be coming from. An autopsy is going to change the appearance of the body a bit, but not a lot. But when you take out someone's throat and their Adam's apple and their tongue and all of their internal organs, even if you replace and you stuff with cotton to try and rebuild, there's still going to be a different appearance to them, especially to anybody who's looked at them their whole life and studied every part of their, being. You're going to see a difference. Yes, I would love, Susie, to do all the religions and to dive into a bunch of different religions. I did do a video. I did an interview with a gentleman who, not voodoo, Santeria. Is that right? And I haven't edited it with it. I don't have, because the thing is, I feel like I could do videos with anybody talking, like my Zoom videos where I'm talking to people of all different religions and we're talking through the culture. But would it not be more interesting if I'm actually visiting and we're looking at some of the traditions and kind of role playing out some of it? Definitely going to be more interesting. Those take a lot more time and money and such to do on my part. And so I feel like if I want to do those videos, I really want to do them well. I definitely could do a religion video and just hit on some of the major differences and talk about them and maybe show some pictures. So we could do that just to give you some overview, I guess, of some of them. I did not watch Family Plots back in the day. I did do a video on here about different TV shows that did deal with funeral homes. Family Plots was one. Any reality show is a reality show. So you can't believe they're filming over the course of a week. They're going to pick out the 10 minutes of that week that were entertaining or can be edited together entertainingly for you, the viewer. So you can only believe a little part. I have watched a few snippets of it just to get an idea, to be able to talk about it and kind of give you my reference back on it. So during a tissue donation, it really depends. If there is what we call kind of a full tissue donation, they're going to take tissue depth skin. They're going to take as much bone as they can. They're going to take, organs or whatever they may need. Typically what we will get of the individual, so like our local, if there's going to be a viewing, they will not do the bones in the arm. They will not take from the shoulder down to the wrist. Those they will leave, but they will do the legs. And what that looks like essentially can be one of two things. We may get from the hip bone all the way to the foot, there is nothing but some skin. And that skin is literally down to bare minimum skin. All the tissue, all the muscle, everything else is gone. So it's basically kind of a stump of a body with two pieces of skin hanging down and then the foot attached at the bottom. Very odd to look at, but that means they have taken their as much as they can to be able to use. Our local organization does not just take to take. They don't take anything that has not already been allocated for with a company to be given and used on an individual. So you don't just take a bone to take a bone, like that bone has already been allocated for to be used in a situation for somebody. But so much is taken. If they're taking skin or tissue depth skin, the old way of taking skin, we call it almost a cheese grater, where the top little layer of tissue would be grated off or peeled off with a machine. So it would be a perfectly squared off patch down the large areas of the body. So on the thigh, there would be a big section. On the back, there would be big sections, sometimes across the stomach, so that you could take a large section. And that skin can be stretched so huge by the companies to then be used on burn victims and all sorts of other situations. It's amazing what they can do with donated skin. They have now found if they take tissue depth skin all the way down to muscle, which sometimes on the back is where they will typically take from now, the whole back will be taken off down to muscle, which means sometimes that goes all the way into the cavity, the abdomen cavity of the individual. So now sometimes some of the individuals we will be getting back to embalm and care for, we can't close that up. It is a huge open area. So there is no way for us to enclose the body fully again. So that's why we have to use the plastic undergarments, because there's going to be some leakage. There's going to be extreme measures we need to take to preserve that tissue that's now fully exposed, because we can't put anything back there when it's all open and gone. So we will preserve and do what we can and try and make sure there's limited leaking when we get to the day of viewing. But a lot of the body is cut down to as much as they can use, they will use. But for viewability, the hands and the face are all still there and intact and fine, so that when you're viewing the person, you don't see what's under the clothing, you don't see what they have taken. So for viewability, the person may look bulkier because they have that plastic undergarment on, and we have things under there to keep from leaking and to keep preservation. That's really what you're going to see when you see a person prepared for viewing, when they've done all that donation, is because of that. So they kind of tell you a little bit of what's going on, but you don't know until you see an actual person who has donated what that looks like in reality. But they are making the most of that donation, which is so generous of the person to do, and for the family to do following death. The embalmers get a little irked just because it's a lot more work for us, but it would be a lot more work if it was a car accident person or something like that. But that's our job. Our job is whoever is in front of us to care for them the best way we can. And so it's always a battle, anybody gets annoyed by anything nowadays, I guess. When the autopsy is complete, all the internal organs are placed in a bag back in the person's abdomen. And that's how we receive them in most cases. Some medical examiners or coroner situations, they may place them just in the body bag with the individual to go back. What are the rules of viewing and embalming being done if you're not a licensed embalmer funeral director? So every state is different, and every funeral home chooses what they may allow and what they may not allow. If someone just came in off the street and was interested in funeral directing, I would not allow them in to see an embalming. Like, that's a sacred zone. It's a sacred place. Laws aside, just for my comfort's sake, what they're seeing is, someone naked and exposed and vulnerable. Even if they're dead, that's still how they are. And to me, that's sacred. I'm not just going to let anybody in to see that. If somebody was enrolled in school, all signed up, and they showed me, kind of that they were enrolled and they were going off to school and they just wanted to be prepared for what they were going to see, then yes, I would consider and allow them possibly to come in, depending on the laws. Laws say that someone needs to be a licensed apprentice or an embalmer to be in the preparation room. I mean, one, it's for exposure, liability, all sorts of things. So you may find a funeral home, depending on the laws of their state, who is more lenient and may allow somebody to come in you may find that they're going to be very strict and stringent on that. You can't hold that against them when they're protecting the sanctity of their business and of the families they're serving. So all you can do is ask, all you can do is approach and, see what they say. Something you might do is talk to a trade embalmer, see if you can follow around a trade embalmer for a day. You're going to get more exposure of the bodies, and then they can maybe ask about accessibility to be able to see. You might also, like Michigan does not allow centralized embalming, where a trade embalmer would maybe have one location that bodies came through to be embalmed at and then gone out to the funeral homes. So maybe you ask the trade embalmer if you can be there with them at a centralized, if that's allowed in your state. Oh, how do you embalm a person who is an organ donor? Same way you would anyone else. You treat what is in front of you and preserve what's in front of you with whichever, arteries you need to do. If it's topical, then it's topical. If it's internal and through the circulatory system, then it's that way. So you do everything you can to get as much preservation as possible. When you get a limb cut off, what does the hospital do with them? Put it in the dumpster or have someone come get it and burn it like they do a body? So if somebody has amputation, the hospital would throw away with medical waste unless you ask them to save it, and then you would bring it, you could call your local funeral home or crematory and have it cremated and then saved to be buried with you when you die. It's up to you, really. Jillian, that is an excellent question. You had a funeral home closed down for misappropriation of funds for prepaid funerals. Will other funeral homes take these families if funds are gone, or are they SOL? Yes, this is such an excellent question. So what a lot of times will happen is, so let's say this happened in Michigan, where a funeral home misappropriated funds, the funeral home gets shut down, which this has happened. A lot of times what may happen is your state organization, like the Michigan Funeral Directors Association, may step in and talk to some of their members and say, hey, XYZ funeral homes, will you honor these contracts if the money is there, or will you help these families, or will you, and so that way they can put out a release to the press that says, such and such funeral home was closed down. Michigan Funeral Directors Association would really like to help you in this situation. Please call XYZ funeral home and they can hopefully assist you. If the money's gone, the money's gone. But maybe those funeral homes can help you with a discounted rate or something. So eventually what will happen is those families through lawsuit will hopefully get money back that they put in from the owners of the funeral home and the business insurance and all that. So eventually, hopefully their money will go back to them somehow through those channels. It's a horrible thing when that happens. Yes, we can get sick, definitely. Different MRSA, C. diff, those are the two that worry me the most because they're very contagious. If we get a body or a deceased that has died with MRSA and with C. diff, because they're very common, they don't, they're not something that does always kill you, but it's something that can make you very, very sick, and it is very contagious. So those are two things I always, hepatitis C, things like that. Definitely things that can kill you, like Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, AIDS, things of that nature, HIV, any of those type of things. Obviously, it can always be there. And the thing with Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which is kind of the mad cow disease for humans, is it could lay dormant where you don't even know it's there for 15, 20 years. So I could have it right now, and I may not exhibit any of the symptoms till I'm 60. And then all of a sudden, you show the symptoms and have it, and there's no cure for it. There's nothing you can do. It's kind of our kryptonite of the profession, because there's nothing we can do once it's there. It's a horrible, horrible disease. And it's highly, highly contagious for us. So asking about the head block, Jake is, I'm curious about the head being on a block during embalming. Once the body is embalmed, if you remove the block, would the body stay in that position? Yes. However, we have gravity. So that head's going to slowly drift back down over time because of gravity. We have that block stay in place under the head. So the head is in the correct position until you place them in the casket and the head's on the pillow. But yes, most of the time when you remove that block, the person's going to stay in the position because they are rigid from the embalming. Can you choose which organs to donate? Yes, your family needs to know, because when they do the interview and get consent, they need consent for what they can remove. A lot of families will say, go ahead and remove whatever you're able to remove. Whatever you're able to procure and use, go ahead and do. But like I said, very small percentage of people that can actually donate internal organs in the romanticized movie version where you're donating your heart to save a life and you're donating, your kidneys to save a life and such. So it's very, very small percentage of people that can actually do that. Yes, we embalm people who want to be cremated if there's going to be a public viewing and the family authorizes it. Yes, so then an organ donor, they will do a little parade at the hospital. So it depends on the organization who does the procurement. They may not do the procurement at the hospital. They may do it at the donation site. And the teams are all brought into the donation site. But when they leave the hospital, they will do that final walk, and people may line the halls and kind of pay honor to the person who is going off to do this donation and give all that they have to give in that moment. So it is a very humbling and very honorable moment when they do that. And I love that they do that. And it's showing everybody else that, you're respected and honored in that moment, and you're not just being sent off to be taken apart and such. So it is pretty awesome. Can you do a video on the scandal around McAllister School in New York City? I can. I have just tried to stay away from some of that because there's so much, I don't know, like any news story, there's good, bad, and erroneous information that's out there. So yeah, it would be good to kind of get out the truth of that situation. And it has put a little black mark on that school for sure, and on the testing and everything. So that would be a good idea. The grossest thing that you have witnessed while prepping a body. Ryan. Oh, Ryan, yes. So this is the grossest. You would think something else would be grosser, but I had an individual who, this is so gross. I don't gag very often. So this is, and she had corn as one of her last meals. And so when she had some excrement during the embalming, which happens, you build up pressure on your abdomen and the person poops. No big deal. Usually you wash it down, but it was all corn poop. It was so gross, guys. And I don't know why that really caught me and kind of grossed me out, but it really did. And I know, I'm sure you guys would say think like maggots or something else, but nope, corn poop did me in. One of the few times I've really, truly almost thrown up in the prep room. Mark, I saw your message. So yes, the McAllister. I don't really want to speak about it in the live forum. I want to get all my information, and I will dive in and research it and really get some good information on it and do a video on it to talk about it. I don't want to just offhandedly talk about it. Sorry, Laura. Yeah, sorry. Good morning, JW. All right, and I think our 30 minutes is in and I never even touched questions, which is awesome. So I save them for the next week then if you guys submit and I put them on my list. You guys brought them today. Like whenever I get off my live videos and I have this like awesome feeling, it's usually because you guys have been hammering me with the best questions and having great discussion from it. And I love that. So thank you so much for that. It really creates the best information if I can keep hammering away and just word vomiting out answers for you. So, hey, a lot of you headed off to mortuary school. Yeah, Damien and James, that's awesome. So happily ever, Lydia. One last answer. Does my husband have the right to override my wishes if I have them in a will? It depends on the state, but in Michigan, yes. In Michigan, unless your other family takes your will to the court to contest what your husband's trying to do, and the judge overrules your husband, which can take a period of time, and everything could already be done at that point. So it would have to be right from the get-go, they go get a court order to hold on everything. But yes, he can override it. You don't get to choose your own disposition in Michigan. It doesn't happen, unfortunately. How are deceased with ostomies treated during embalming? I told you I was going to stop, but it's so hard. So like a colostomy bag. So it really depends on the embalmer. You may get an embalmer who is a little lazier and leaves the colostomy bag on, which I think is horrible, and puts like a pair of plastic pants on over it. The correct way would be to remove the colostomy bag, push in that little bubble of skin that comes out, push it kind of in and sew up with like a purse string suture, which means you sew around the hole, cinch it together, and close up that hole. So you're treating the situation at hand by closing that area up. A lot of times I will aspirate through that hole because it means one less puncture. I don't want to, if I've already have a hole, I don't want to poke another hole to do the aspiration. So I'll remove the bag, use that hole to aspirate, put the fluid back in, and then cinch it up and sew that area together. So that's how I would treat it. Thank you guys. I'm going to sign off. I like to try and keep these brief so that we get just good content, good information, and then on to next week. Thank you guys for joining. Always appreciative of you. So much good stuff coming. So stick with me for the year. Really, really excited about a lot of the stuff that is to come. So thanks, guys. Have a good week. I will catch you next Wednesday here for a live session. You can always email over to Kari@KariNorthey.com and always post comments here with questions. I try to get to as many as possible. If you think I'm ignoring you, I'm not. If you have a question that is so important to you, email it to me. That is where you're going to get the best response for things. I'll tell you either that I'm going to get to it in next week's video, or I may give you an answer right then. So if you have something pressing, weighing on your heart, weighing on your mind, email it to me, Kari@KariNorthey.com. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.